Xyros hovered silently within the shimmering halls of the Veltrax Academy, his elongated limbs tucked neatly behind him, his eyes fixated on the holographic data floating before him. His final exams loomed, and he was determined to prove himself as one of the most promising students in his cohort. The Veltrax, a species proud of their intellectual prowess and technological superiority, had built a vast empire spanning hundreds of star systems. To them, lesser species, primitive, undeveloped, and fragile, were mere footnotes in the grand cosmic tale of Veltrax dominance. As Xyros sifted through the material on his final subject, primitive life forms in the galactic fringe, the hollow display projected a rotating image of a human, labeled Homo sapiens. A smirk played across his lips. Humans. The Veltrax had long considered them one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They were slow, inefficient, and easily broken. The files on them were laughable, limited to basic space travel, reliant on outdated combustion engines, and riddled with internal conflict. Xyros had no reason to think otherwise. After all, his entire education had emphasized Veltrax superiority over every other sentient race. His instructors were relentless in their comparisons. They used humans as an example of what happened when a species failed to evolve properly, allowing emotions, physical frailty, and violence to define their society. They lived on a single, fragile planet and hadn't even developed advanced bioengineering techniques. Xyros couldn't understand why the Galactic Exchange Program had decided to initiate a new round of studies with humans. The Veltrax already knew everything they needed to know. Just as Xyros was about to close the file, his wrist communicator chimed. The icon blinked with urgency. Xyros tapped it and a familiar voice crackled through. It was Professor Arvok, one of the lead instructors at the academy. Xyros? Arvok's voice was formal, laced with authority. I see you're preparing for your final assessment. I have news. You've been selected for the Galactic Exchange Program. Xyros straightened in surprise, his eyes narrowing. The exchange program, Professor? I thought those positions were reserved for the best of the best. I hadn't applied. Precisely. The selection is based on merit, and you've earned this assignment through your academic performance. However, Arvok paused and Xyros caught the slightest hint of amusement in his tone. Your assignment is on Earth. Earth? Xyros couldn't mask his shock. Earth was a backwater planet compared to the glittering worlds of the Veltrax Empire. Humans? How could this be an opportunity? Arvok continued, yes, the human homeworld. Your mission will be to observe their behavior and report your findings. While it may seem beneath you, the Council insists that we maintain relations, even with the lesser species. Think of it as a chance to broaden your understanding of these curious beings. Xyros couldn't help but feel a sting of embarrassment. His peers would mock him for being sent to such a place. He had dreamed of assignments on vibrant worlds like Corinth or Velkin 6, not a primitive rock circling an unremarkable star. Still, he understood the value of proving himself. If he could excel in this minor mission, perhaps he could secure a more prestigious assignment later. Very well, Professor. I will carry out my duties. Xyros cut the connection, his mind already swirling with thoughts of the assignment. He would treat it as an opportunity to gather data and confirm what he already knew, that humans were nothing compared to the Veltrax. 2 standard cycles later, Xyros found himself aboard a sleek Veltraxian vessel hurtling through space, Earth growing larger in the viewport as they approached the planet's atmosphere. His initial awe at the sight of Earth quickly faded when he saw the primitive technology of the human spaceports. Their structures were bulky and outdated compared to the floating cities and zero-gravity infrastructures of Veltrax Prime. When Xyros disembarked, he was greeted by a group of human scientists and officials, their expressions full of excitement and curiosity. They welcomed him with gestures of respect and smiles that seemed oddly sincere. Xyros gave the customary Veltrax greeting, though he barely hid his disdain as he took in their fragile forms and inefficient body movements. They were slow, they didn't hover, and they communicated verbally, such an inefficient use of time. As he was escorted to the research facility where he would reside, Xyros took note of their rudimentary technology and basic transportation systems. Everything seemed so outdated and inefficient. He had expected as much. The humans provided him with access to their databases, encouraging him to ask any questions and observe freely. He couldn't help but pity their enthusiasm. What could he possibly learn from them? Still, he would complete his task. Xyros settled into his quarters with a sense of superiority. This was going to be easier than he thought. He could hardly wait to report back to the Veltrax Academy that everything they'd taught about humans was not only accurate but perhaps overly generous. As he gazed out at the bustling human city below, Xyros prepared himself for weeks of boredom, completely unaware that his assumptions about humanity were about to be shattered. Xyros stood on the balcony of the research facility, overlooking a sprawling human city. Its skyline, though impressive in its scale, seemed quaint to his Veltraxian eyes. He watched as vehicles crawled through congested streets, spewing fumes, while humans hurried to their destinations on foot. The air was thick with noise and movement, everything felt primitive, chaotic. He had been on Earth for several days now, and his initial impressions had done little to change his opinion of the species. These humans were fragile creatures, shackled by their biology and limited technology. Yet, something nagged at the back of Xyros' mind, something that didn't quite fit the narrative he had been taught. Despite their apparent frailty, humans were everywhere. Their cities buzzed with life, their people pushing forward despite the clear inefficiencies around them. It was curious, almost unsettling. If they were as weak as his people believed, how had they built such vast societies? How had they survived for so long? His thoughts were interrupted by Dr. Emily Ross, the head of the facility, a human with an easy smile and eyes sharp with intelligence. She approached him with the same air of polite enthusiasm that most humans displayed around him, as though he were some rare, exotic animal. "Xyros, we've arranged for you to observe one of our physical endurance training sessions tomorrow. It's part of a joint military exercise. I think you'll find it fascinating." Xyros turned toward her, skepticism clear on his face. "I doubt I will, Dr. Ross. Your people are not known for physical prowess. From what I've seen, your reliance on manual labor and basic transport systems is indicative of your species' limitations." Dr. Ross raised an eyebrow, her smile unwavering. "Well, I suppose you'll have to see for yourself." The next day, Xyros stood at the edge of a large, open field where the military exercise was taking place. Dozens of human soldiers, unmodified, without cybernetic enhancements or exoskeletons, were running through grueling obstacle courses. They crawled through mud, scaled towering walls, and sprinted under the weight of heavy packs. At first, Xyros was unimpressed. Their movements lacked the fluidity of Veltrax warriors, their coordination seemed erratic. But as the hours passed, something changed. He saw the exhaustion setting in. The humans were drenched in sweat, their bodies bruised and battered. Yet they didn't stop. They pushed on even as their muscles strained and their faces twisted in pain. Xyros watched in disbelief as a soldier, clearly injured, pulled himself up after a fall and continued the course. His leg was bleeding, yet he showed no signs of slowing down. Every time one of them faltered, they found a way to rise again, to keep going. It defied logic. "Why don't they stop?" Xyros muttered to Dr. Ross, who stood beside him. She glanced at him, her smile returning. "Humans don't stop when it hurts. We keep going." Xyros couldn't look away from the scene unfolding before him. It wasn't just endurance, it was something more. These humans were fighting through their pain, their limitations, with a stubbornness that was both perplexing and unsettling. His belief in their inferiority, so deeply ingrained, now began to waver. Perhaps humans weren't weak after all. Xyros couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his mind after witnessing the endurance training. Over the next few weeks, he delved deeper into human history, driven by a need to understand what he had seen. The more he researched, the more unsettled he became. He discovered that human history was rife with war, conflict, and catastrophe. They had faced extinction more than once, global wars, nuclear brinkmanship, plagues that wiped out millions, and yet they persisted. They rebuilt, adapted, and somehow grew stronger. The Veltrax never faced such chaos. Their society was built on logic, order, and advancement without such devastation. How, then, had humans thrived in such a chaotic environment? One night, in the facility's archive room, Xyros stared at an ancient video of human warfare. The footage showed soldiers trudging through frozen wastelands during a world war, enduring unbearable cold with little more than tattered uniforms and sheer determination. The Veltrax would never send unmodified beings into such environments. They relied on advanced technology for protection. But these humans survived through raw willpower and resourcefulness. How is this possible? Xyros muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Dr. Ross, who had been reviewing data at a nearby console, looked up and approached him. "What's bothering you, Xyros?" He turned to her, eyes narrowed. "Your people, how did they survive all of this?" He gestured to the screen showing scenes of devastation and hardship. "Every time your species seems on the brink of collapse, you find a way to endure. You've faced wars, famines, natural disasters, and still you thrive. It doesn't make sense. Your biology is inferior, your technology limited, By all accounts, you should have been wiped out long ago. Dr. Ross gave him a measured look, clearly choosing her words carefully. It's true we've been through hell as a species. But survival isn't just about strength or technology. It's about adaptability. Humans are incredibly adaptable. We evolve through hardship. Every challenge we face teaches us something, makes us tougher, smarter. And there's something else too, resilience. Xyros frowned. Resilience? Yes, she continued. Humans have a deep, almost irrational will to survive. Even when the odds are stacked against us, we find a way to keep going. We don't give up easily. Xyros found that explanation unsettling. Resilience. It was a concept that Veltrax society didn't emphasize. They avoided pain, engineered out flaws, and focused on efficiency. But humans? They embraced the struggle and seemed to grow stronger because of it. Their ability to endure adversity wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, and deeply ingrained in their culture. A few days later, Xyros witnessed something that shook him to his core. A worker in the facility was injured while repairing a damaged transport. His arm was crushed under a piece of machinery, yet the human remained conscious and even helped direct the others to fix the problem before allowing himself to be treated. Xyros stared in disbelief. A Veltrax would have been incapacitated, possibly beyond repair, but this human simply gritted his teeth and endured the pain. As the medical team finally attended to the man, Xyros realized something that terrified him. Humans were dangerous, not because of their technology or physical strength, but because they possessed an indomitable spirit. That, more than anything, made them a threat his people had completely underestimated. Xyros paced in his quarters, his mind racing with the revelations of the past weeks. Everything he had been taught about humans, their fragility, their inferiority, had been wrong. The Veltrax had dismissed them as a minor species, too primitive to be of any real consequence. Yet, what Xyros had witnessed told a far different story. Humans weren't weak, they were resilient to a terrifying degree. And it wasn't just their ability to endure physical hardship that unnerved him, it was their sheer willpower, their relentless drive to survive and overcome. A soft chime pulled him from his thoughts. His wrist communicator blinked with an urgent message. It was Dr. Ross. Xyros, we need you in the command center immediately. There's a situation. Xyros' pulse quickened. He hurried to the facility's control room, where a flurry of activity had erupted. Human personnel worked at their stations with a focus he hadn't seen before. Dr. Ross approached him, her expression grim. A hostile fleet is approaching Earth's outer orbit. An old enemy of the Veltrax, I believe. They've sent out a distress signal, but we're on our own for now. Xyros felt a jolt of fear. He had read about this species, an aggressive alien race that had clashed with the Veltrax centuries ago. They were brutal and efficient, far more advanced than humanity. Earth didn't stand a chance. He glanced at Dr. Ross, expecting panic, but her eyes were steady. We don't have the kind of defenses they do, but we've dealt with threats before, she said. We have a plan. You can't be serious, Xyros scoffed. These invaders are far beyond your capabilities. Your weapons are primitive in comparison. The Veltrax would never send unprepared forces into such a battle. Dr. Ross simply nodded. Perhaps. But humans don't back down from a fight. We'll do whatever it takes to protect our world. Xyros followed her to the central display, where tactical maps showed the approaching enemy ships. Human military leaders gathered around, discussing strategies. Their plan was both simple and audacious. While the enemy expected a direct confrontation, the humans intended to outmaneuver them using their planet's orbital debris and outdated but reliable weaponry. Xyros was stunned by the ingenuity. The humans weren't relying on advanced technology, they were using every scrap of knowledge and resource at their disposal to level the playing field. It was reckless, but it was also brilliant. Hours later, Xyros watched from the observation deck as the battle began. The enemy fleet moved in, confident and overwhelming. But the humans fought with a kind of fury and tenacity that Xyros had never seen before. Their ships, though less advanced, darted through the debris field with precision, launching coordinated strikes. They used the environment to their advantage, exploiting weaknesses in the enemy's formation. And then, to his astonishment, they started winning. As the enemy retreated, Xyros stood in silent awe. The humans had defied every expectation. They had taken on a far superior force and emerged victorious, not through brute strength, but through cunning, creativity, and relentless determination. When the dust settled, Xyros felt a deep, unsettling realization. The Veltrax had been catastrophically wrong. Humans were not weak, they were dangerous. Their will to survive, their ability to adapt and overcome, made them a force unlike any other. He now understood the truth: humans were a species that could not be underestimated. As Xyros prepared his final report for the Veltrax Academy, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of fear. His people had dismissed humans for too long. And if the Veltrax didn't rethink their position, they might soon learn the hard way just how formidable humanity could be.